She was drenched, late. And desperate, then she slipped into an elevator and fell right into the lap of a silent man in a wheelchair. What she didn't know was that this one clumsy moment would unravel a chain of events that would change her life, his, and a boy's forever. But was it fate or something deeper no one saw coming? If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and like the video. It truly helps us grow. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Love hearing your stories too. Now let's jump into the story. The rain poured hard against the glass buildings of the city, washing the streets in silver. Nina Dawson held her bag tightly as she dashed through puddles, soaked from head to toe. Her shoes made a squelching sound with every step, and her breath came in sharp bursts. Today was important. Today was her last chance. Her brown hair clung to her cheeks as she rushed through the wide glass doors of Rowan Ventures, water dripping from her blazer. The lobby was warm and silent, polished floors shining under soft lights. A large gold sign behind the front desk read Rowan Ventures Vision Forward. Nina didn't stop to admire it. She sprinted toward the elevators, the receptionist calling after her, "You're just in time." But she was too nervous to respond. The elevator doors began to close. "Hold it, please," she shouted just as her hand reached the metal. The doors slid open, and Nina stumbled inside. What happened next felt like a dream. Her foot slipped on the wet floor. Her balance failed. With a loud thud, Nina fell forward and landed straight onto someone. Her elbow hit something hard. Knee smacked against a railing. Her bag tipped over and papers flew into the air like startled birds. "Oh no," she gasped, struggling to get up. "I'm so sorry. Didn't see why, didn't mean to. Oh my God." The man she had landed on didn't move. He sat in a sleek black wheelchair wearing a tailored suit that somehow looked untouched by the rain. His face was calm, his gray eyes unreadable. He didn't flinch. He didn't speak. Nina's hands trembled as she gathered her ruined papers. One was stuck to his polished shoe. She hesitated, then gently peeled it off without looking at him. The silence was sharp. The elevator doors closed behind them, sealing them in. "I'm late for an interview," she said, trying to laugh but failing. Her voice was small. "I promise I'm not usually this chaotic." Still the man said nothing. She stood again, brushing wet hair from her eyes, trying to fix her expression into something professional. The elevator dinged, and the doors opened. The man wheeled out without a word. Nina followed seconds later, her face burning with embarrassment. She walked toward the reception desk, trying to look composed. "Interview for the executive assistant role?" the receptionist asked, eyeing her soaked clothes with polite surprise. Nina nodded, clutching her bag. "Yes, Nina Dawson, you're on the list," the woman said. "Someone will call you shortly." Nina sat down. The vinyl chair felt cold through her damp skirt. She looked around at the spotless lobby, the shiny sculptures, the people in pressed suits walking by without a glance. Her heart still pounded. She had already expected the day to be hard. But this was beyond imagination. 4 floors down, a boy sat near the windows, legs in braces, a worn sketch pad in his lap. His name was Jamie Rowan. He was only 10, quiet and always watching. His nurse had stepped away to get a drink. Jamie didn't mind. He liked watching the way people moved fast, busy, like the world owed them something. That's when he saw her. Nina walked across the lower lobby after the interview. Shoulders hunched, her bag clutched like a lifeline. Her clothes were still damp, her hair messy. She looked tired, but not broken. Jamie tilted his head, eyes following her carefully. As she passed a janitor struggling to clean up a spilled mop bucket, Nina paused. Without thinking, she bent down to help. She didn't hesitate, didn't look around to see if anyone was watching. She just helped, smiled, and said, "We've all had those days, right?" No one ever helped the janitor. No one ever looked at Jamie, either. From the mezzanine above, Silas Rowan stood behind a glass railing. He had been watching too. He hadn't spoken since the elevator. Hadn't asked his assistant to find out who she was. Hadn't said a word, but now he found himself watching her again. Her movements weren't smooth. Her shoes were worn. Her skirt was wrinkled. She didn't belong in his world of steel and silence. And yet, something about her felt right. She hadn't asked who he was, hadn't tried to impress. She had only apologized honestly, nervously, and tried to move on. That moment in the elevator had stayed with him, not because of the fall, but because of her reaction. Real, unpolished. Human Jamie continued to sketch quietly in his notebook. Silas turned back toward his office, but something had already shifted. He didn't know her name, but he would not yet. Not today, but soon. Nina returned to the tall glass building 2 days later, but not for another interview. This time, she was there as a delivery worker, carrying a catering order from the diner, where she had picked up a second job. Her back ached, and her shoes were still damp from the morning rain. But she moved with quiet determination. She had no idea she would see him again. As she entered the lobby with 2 large paper bags, eyes quickly scanned the room. Suits, coffee cups, chatter, the usual. She didn't notice the boy near the fountain until she almost passed him. He was sitting in a wheelchair, sketch pad in his lap, pencil moving in slow circles. He looked up as she approached, eyes wide. It was Jamie. He remembered her. Nina stopped, her breath caught in her throat. "Hi," she said, crouching down so they were eye level. "Remember me?" Jamie nodded once. He didn't speak, but his pencil paused. She smiled gently. "You were drawing something, huh?"
I make slowly.
Jamie turned the sketch pad around. Nina let out a surprised laugh. There she was, in black and white. Hair frizzy, eyes wide, one hand flying in the air, and her resume papers floating all around like feathers. He had drawn her moment in the elevator. Her cheeks turned pink, but she laughed anyway. "Wow, that's honestly very accurate." Jamie gave the smallest smile. Proud but shy, Nina reached into her bag and pulled out the least crumpled piece of paper she could find. Her fingers moved quickly, folding by habit, corner to corner, wings, tail. In less than a minute, she had crafted a paper crane. "I figured your drawings could use a friend," she said, placing the crane gently on the arm of his wheelchair. Jamie stared at it, then at her. His hand reached out and touched the folded wings with care. Then he smiled. Really smiled. Above them, on the second-floor balcony, Silas Rowan stood behind a pane of glass, watching again. His eyes were sharp, but something behind them had softened. He had not expected to see her again, let alone watch his son smile because of her. Nina didn't notice him. She wasn't performing for anyone. She didn't even seem to realize Jamie was the CEO's son. She was just ... kind. Silas remembered what it felt like to be around people who only wanted something from him. After the accident, people had treated him like glass. Fragile, valuable, but breakable. No one was real with him. No one was real with Jamie either, but she was. Later that evening, Nina sat in the hospital beside her father, who lay sleeping. Under dim lights, the machines beeped softly. Her shoulders slumped with exhaustion. She reached into her bag and pulled out the same resume, now wrinkled and barely readable. "I didn't get it," she whispered. "I don't think I did. I fell. I ruined everything." Her father didn't respond. He hadn't spoken in days, but Nina still talked to him as if he could hear. "And I think I landed on someone important." He didn't even say a word, just rolled away. "I probably looked like a storm had hit the elevator." She chuckled softly, but it faded quickly. The worry returned to her eyes. She leaned back in the chair, too tired to cry again, across the hospital courtyard. Jamie sat next to his physical therapist. He wasn't focused on his stretches. He was drawing again, kept glancing toward the hospital building. Then, through the window, he saw her. Nina sat by her father's bedside, still and quiet. Jamie tilted his head and looked at her as if he was trying to understand something deeper. He picked up his pencil again. The next day, Nina returned to the Rowan building to drop off medical files. Another job? Another errand? She didn't expect to see anyone, but there was Jamie again, sitting in the courtyard near a small pond. Sketch pad open, pencil moving carefully. Nina hesitated, then walked over and crouched beside him. "Hey artist," she said. "What's the masterpiece today?" Jamie turned the sketch pad. It was a drawing of a tiny paper crane perched on the corner of a wheelchair. Below it, he had written one word in pencil: friend. Nina blinked quickly, surprised by the warmth rising in her chest. That's beautiful, Jamie smiled. It was bigger this time. Nina sat beside him, and they watched the pond in silence. Ducks floated by, leaves drifted on the surface. She didn't ask him questions, didn't try to fill the silence. She just sat with him. Every day after that, they seemed to cross paths. Once by accident, twice by habit, and eventually by quiet. In tension, Nina started bringing small paper animals with her: a frog, a swan, a tiny boat. She gave them silly names. This one's a frog that only jumps at midnight. Jamie laughed, really laughed. The sound was soft and light, like something that had been locked away. Above them, Silas noticed. He told himself he wasn't watching, but his eyes always found the window when she arrived. Something about her changed the air. Jamie began waiting for her. He looked for her during his sessions, during meals, during breaks. He never said it out loud, but he didn't have to. Nina had become something steady, something gentle and Silas. He wasn't sure what he felt yet, but he knew one thing for certain: this woman, the one who fell into his life without warning, was changing everything. Nina adjusted the stack of folders in her arms as she stepped out of the elevator onto the 12th floor. It had been 3 weeks since she officially started at Rowan Ventures. The job was demanding, the building overwhelming, and her clothes were still secondhand. But she showed up early every day and worked with quiet focus. She hadn't expected to become part of Silas, Rowan's inner team, so quickly. At first, she thought the extra tasks were temporary. Then she noticed Silas began requesting her directly. Didn't explain why. He just called her in when things needed doing. She didn't ask questions. She got the work done. Jamie visited. More often, too. Every time he rolled through the executive floor, he looked for Nina. They built paper animals, shared quiet moments, and traded stories over his sketch pad. It became routine, simple, comforting, but outside their small circle. People started to talk. At first it was whispers behind half-closed doors, or quiet glances exchanged near the water cooler. Then came the louder comments, ones she couldn't pretend not to hear. She's always in his office. Have you seen how the kid lights up around her? She must have done something to get in so fast. Nina pretended not to notice. She smiled, kept her head down, and worked harder. But inside, she began to shrink. Every compliment felt like a question. Every look felt like suspicion. One afternoon in the break room, she overheard 2 junior staff members talking by the vending machine. One, a sharply dressed woman with bright lipstick, leaned in and whispered loudly enough for Nina to hear. Must be nice skipping qualifications if the CEO's son likes your smile. Nina froze. The second woman said quietly, "You don't know that?" "Oh, please." The first woman laughed. "He's in a wheelchair. Of course he needs someone cheerful around. And she's perfect. No degree, cheap clothes, always happy." To help, Nina turned and walked out. She didn't say a word. She didn't cry. But something inside her cracked. By the end of the week, she stopped bringing paper cranes. She handed messages to staff instead of delivering them herself. She stopped joining Jamie in the courtyard. When Silas asked for her in person, she responded. With an email or a printed note, Silas noticed the change right away. One evening, he found her at her desk, typing with quick fingers, her face tired. "Are you avoiding me?" he asked from the hallway, his voice quiet but direct. Nina looked up, startled. "No, just trying to stay professional." "That's new," he said, his eyes narrowing slightly. She hesitated. Maybe it should have been the standard from the start. Silence stretched between them. It's the hum of the air conditioner filled the space. "If someone said something, tell me who." Silas said firmly. "That's not the point," she replied, standing slowly. "It's not about them, it's about me." Her voice wavered, but she kept going. "I don't fit here." "Silas, not really. I'm just pretending. I don't wear the right clothes. I don't speak the same way. And I sure don't belong in the CEO's office every other day." His expression shifted, softening with something close to concern. "You think Jamie smiles at you because of your resume?" he asked. Nina looked away. "I think he'd be better off with someone who belongs here, someone with credentials and polish, someone who won't be laughed at behind her back." Her voice cracked at the last word, and she quickly turned away, and maybe she added, "So would you." She walked past him before he could respond, her shoulders stiff, her steps quick. The next morning, Jamie waited for her in the courtyard. She didn't come. He waited again the day after. Still no Nina. He asked the nurse she didn't know. Asked his father. Silas didn't answer. Even asked the front desk receptionist, but no one gave him a reason. Soon, Jamie stopped asking. He stopped drawing too. His food remained untouched. Smiles disappeared. At night, he cried softly into his pillow, clutching a wrinkled paper crane that had been folded weeks ago. Silas came home one evening to find Jamie sitting in the dark, sketchpad on his lap, not moving. "Jamie," Silas said gently. The boy didn't respond. Silas sat beside him. He hadn't always known how to be a father. It had been harder since the accident. But he had seen what Nina brought out in Jamie. Joy, peace, hope. "I know you miss her," Silas said, his voice low. "And I know you're hurting." Jamie turned away, shoulders shaking. He clutched the paper crane tightly. Silas looked at his son. And for the first time in years, he felt something new. Not just sadness, not just guilt. It was something deeper, something helpless. He had failed to protect the one person who had brought both of them back to life, and he realized something else too. He didn't want to lose her. Nina sat on a bench outside the hospital, holding a paper cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The sky was pale and gray, like it couldn't decide if it wanted to rain or stay still. She stared at the ground, lost in thought, her heart heavy with regret. She hadn't seen Jamie in days. She hadn't spoken to Silas either. After walking away from both of them, she thought she was protecting herself. All she felt was empty. A soft whir of wheels made her look up. Silas was there, dressed in a navy coat, his hands steady on the arms of his wheelchair. He didn't speak right away, just stopped in front of her, watching her with eyes that seemed more tired than usual. "He's not eating," Silas said quietly. "He's not drawing, and he cries at night." Nina's grip on the coffee cup tightened. "He wakes up shouting your name," Silas added. "No one can reach him, not even me." Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. "Don't do this," she whispered. "Don't make me feel like this is my fault." "I'm not," Silas said. "I just need you to understand. You weren't just someone passing through. You changed everything. For him. For me." Nina shook her head. "I don't belong in your world. Your office. Your family. I was just a glitch in the system." Silas moved closer. His voice softened even more. "My world was cold and quiet before you walked in. Now it's not. You gave my son a reason to smile. You gave me a reason to hope. And you did all of it without asking for anything in return." Nina looked down, afraid to meet his eyes. This job. This connection. It's like holding something too beautiful with hands that always break things. Silas reached out and gently took her hand. "Then let me hold it with you." Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she whispered, "Can I see him?" Silas nodded. "Please." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Jamie was wheeled into the hospital garden. His sketchpad sat untouched in his lap. His head drooped. He hadn't spoken all day. Then from the hallway, Nina appeared. She stepped out into the fading light, moving slowly, carefully, as if entering a dream she didn't want to disturb. Jamie looked up, and his eyes widened. The sketchpad slipped from his lap. Nina crouched beside him and pulled a new paper crane from her coat pocket. "This one's been waiting to meet you," she said softly. Jamie burst into tears and threw his arms around her neck. Nina held him close, tears slipping down her own cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered into his shoulder. "I'm not going anywhere." From a few feet away, Silas watched them, his heart full and aching. This moment, small, quiet, and beautiful, meant everything. A few days later, Nina received a call from the hospital administrator. They were confused. "We received a donation," the woman said, flipping through papers. "For your father's treatment. No request for reimbursement. No note, no explanation. The account is fully covered." Nina stared at the phone, her heart racing. She didn't have to ask who had done it. She already knew. She went straight to her father's room and sat beside him, holding his hand. "Someone saved us," she whispered. "But I think it wasn't just about the money," she cried quietly, overwhelmed by something bigger than kindness. What? It was protection. What? It was love. The next morning, Jamie wheeled himself through the hospital garden, found Nina sitting alone. Under a tree, he handed her something folded, another paper crane. It looked like the first one she had ever given him. She opened it gently. Inside, written in neat pencil letters, were 4 words. "Come back to us." Nina's hand flew to her mouth. She looked at Jamie, who gave her a quiet smile and a small nod. Like he already knew her answer. That evening, she returned to Rowan Ventures. Not for a job, not for an apology, but for something unfinished. Silas was in his office, the skyline behind him glowing with golden light. When Nina entered, he looked up, surprised but calm. She stepped forward, the crane still in her hand. "Why? Didn't you tell me?" she asked. Silas took a breath. "'Cause I didn't want it to be about gratitude." She looked at him closely. It was about something else. The silence between them wasn't cold anymore. It was warm. It was full of meaning. "I never believed in second chances," Silas said, his voice quiet. "Not after the accident. Not after everything I lost. What? I thought emotions made me weak." Nina's throat tightened. "But then you showed up," he continued. And suddenly, feeling something wasn't a weakness. It was being alive again. Her eyes filled. "I was falling for you," she whispered. "I didn't believe someone like you could feel the same." Silas moved forward slowly. His hand reached for hers. "I don't know how to love perfectly," he said. "But I know what I feel when I see you. When I see Jamie light up because you're in the room." She took his hand, steady and sure. "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I," he replied. They held each other, not as CEO and assistant, not as boss and employee, just Silas and Nina, just 2 people who had found something real. Later that month, during the company's annual gala, Silas stood on stage. Beside him sat Jamie, holding another folded crane. The room was full of noise and lights. Silas didn't talk about profits. He talked about hope. "One person can change everything," he said. "Sometimes they arrive in a storm. Sometimes they fall into your life, literally. But when they do, they remind you what it means to be seen, to feel, to live." As if on cue, Nina entered the ballroom. She didn't wear anything fancy. It's just a simple blue dress and a smile full of meaning. Jamie looked at her and grinned. Silas reached out his hand, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the money, not the past. Only the family they had become.